Bismillah, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasul kareem, wa ala alihi ashabi ajma'een. So we see Brother Ryan from Canada, Brother Sajid from Chicago, assalamu alaikum, welcome. And myself, just a quick introduction, my name is Haroon Malik. I'm actually, surprisingly, I'm from Canada as well. I actually lived in States for past 10, 11 years, but I grew up in this small town called Windsor, Canada, which is right next to Detroit. And basically, I've lived in Chicago as well, and Dallas, Texas area. I'm back in Windsor. But from professionally, my role has mostly been in financial analysis for a manufacturing environment, where basically you're responsible for millions and billions of dollars of budget. Currently, I'm working for General Motors, and I've also been involved with taxes, personal and business taxes, for past 10 years. So inshallah, I'll be sharing some experience with you, with everyone who just joined. Overall goal is to, first thing is let's go through the agenda where, let's see. So we're going to be talking about, of course, the main reason for this webinar is what are some of the tax moves that you can make, especially at the year end, which is going to help you and save on taxes. But at the same time, we'll be looking at risk, the provisions. How should we be mentally looking at our provisions, at our income, our spending, our risk? How should we be looking at it from the Islamic point of view? And then, of course, we will talk about taxes. And at the end of the day, we will finish off this webinar by talking about how we can develop a personal budget. And I'm not sure if everybody has a personal budget or not, but it's surprisingly a lot of people do not have it, and it's something that we just want to quickly go through and give you a little intro on how you can start preparing for your personal budgets. Because remember, it's not just about things that you can do at year end, but also what you can do in order to have a fresh start in 2018. Now, this is anything that, just a disclaimer that, these are very high level introduction to some of the points that we'll be talking about. And it's not a scholarly research for the Islamic points or same thing with the tax moves that we'll be giving. So you need to, it's strongly recommended that you have a personal, tax specialist within your contacts or in your local community that you can always go to and ask them about any tax questions that you have, and of course I'll try my best to answer any questions if we have time at the end of the seminar. So once again, quick agenda: how to increase our risk Islamically, smart tax moves that you can make at year end, and how we can develop a budget for 2018, and how do we stay in this practice of creating a budget where we know that Islamically we're supposed to be accounting for ourselves. Everything that we do, good or bad, we know that we'll be accounted for it. So how about your money that you're spending, not just in the cause of Allah, but anything that you do, right? You will be accounted for it. How did you earn it and how did you spend it? And if you don't have a budget, then of course you're not doing a very good job in figuring out where your money is going. And it's surprisingly, I would say, scary when I started doing my own personal budgets. Then you start realizing that how much money is going in these different categories that you just didn't even realize. That just by making small adjustments in your life, you can really save a lot of money. And of course, we'll discuss with the tax moves. So, inshallah, we'll begin with from the Islamic point of view. So let's go through some of these points, and of course, all of these points that you have on the screen are from Islamic sources, from Quran and Sunnah. But because of the time that we have, the short time that we have for this seminar, it will be very hard to go through every single hadith or an ayah. But overall, how do you increase risk? And a lot of times we think that it's something that you have to work, 24 hours a day or 20 hours a day in order to get rich. But a lot of us might have professional jobs. You can make spend eight hours a day working at Walmart, or you can spend 8 hours a day working at Microsoft. And of course, you're going to be making a lot more money at Microsoft than you would be at Walmart. But overall, the key is it's not about your time, right? There's a barakah factor that we need to be looking into as well. That always think that you need to put your effort, and inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you with what you're, with provisions. So it's, of course, we want to be concentrating on how you can save on taxes, but overall, it's all about the bottom line. And it's not just about lowering your expenses, but it's also about increasing your risk or your income. And a lot of times it's the barakah factor that we ignore. It's the blessings of Allah, right? So you could be making a lot more money than your friend, but at the same time, maybe you get into a lot of, let's say, accidents. You'll have some your child will spill coffee on your carpet or something, or you'll get into minor accidents here and there, and all of those expenses for maintenance and repair will add up to a lot more than your friend who's making a lot less money than you. But at the end of the day, your bottom line might be the same. That is what in a very high level, in a nutshell, is barakah factor. That a lot of times you don't just realize it, that because of you applying these simple Islamic principles, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually protecting you from different calamities in life that you can fall into, which are going to get money out of your pocket. So some of those things that you can do, we'll quickly go through these pointers, is repentance from sins. The more you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase your risk or your provision. Taqwa, God consciousness, right? And obedience to Allah. That is another way that is taught to us in Quran and Sunnah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase your risk if every action that you're taking is for the sake of Allah. Now, of course, you can apply that in your spending as well. I'm about to spend my money. Is this that I'm going to buy this item? Is this something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be happy from me or not, right? Think about every single thing that you're doing. Same thing about making money. This investment that I'm about to do, is this something halal? Does this involve interest or not? Right? These are all the questions that you should be asking yourself when it comes to earning and spending your money, and as part of this God consciousness and obedience to Allah. Bonds of kinship, believe it or not, the more stronger ties that you have with your family, your mom, your dad, right? Same thing with your siblings, your cousins, your close relatives. Always try your best. It could be just a quick phone call once a week or so to make sure that you're keeping in touch with your relatives, and that is one of the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised you that He will increase your risk as well. Charity. Now you got to realize that and some of you might have personal stories. I have personal stories as well, that whenever you have donated, especially during hard times as well, but you know what? I'm able to donate, put some money to the side for charity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has increased me in risk, right? You're not always going to get, let's say, I'm going to donate $10. You're not going to get $100 check, because we know from hadith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could multiply it up to 10 times or so, or even more. But this is something that, again, it's the barakah factor. Always have this belief that the more you spend for the sake of Allah, the more you give in charity, inshallah, Allah will increase you in your risk. Worshipping Allah, Hajj and Umrah, the more you think that Hajj and Umrah these days, $14,000 packages, right? $5,000 packages for Umrah or more. But you have to realize that this is the money that you're spending for the sake of Allah. Inshallah, Allah will increase you in risk as well. Hijrah, migration for the sake of Allah. There's a place where you're not able to practice the laws of Islam. Maybe if I move to another place, inshallah, Allah will, you will see the blessings of Allah, and risk will be increasing. Reliance, tawakkul in Allah. That's one of the most important ones, right? Because a lot of times we think that it is my effort that I'm doing. I'm taking these seminars on figuring out how I can make more money or save taxes and things like that. But always have that mindset that it's the tawakkul in Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives, and He can take it away. So always have reliance upon Allah, but you have to do your part, right? You have to realize that even these birds in the morning, right? They go out and seeking Allah's risk. and they don't have a full-time job, and they don't know that if I work X amount of hours, I'm going to get exact, a paycheck that most of us are used to, and then I can spend that to buy food. A bird has no idea where he or she is going, and when it comes back to its nest, most of the time its belly's full, and then it brings back food for its children as well, right? So that's the type of tawakkul you have to have, that I'm gonna put my effort into seeking Allah's rizq, and then inshallah Allah will bless us with that. Now, if it's about seeking job, I've seen people who might be very spiritual, and they might have like best degrees, but then they haven't done their part because they only have reliance upon Allah. I'll say, you know what, submit me your resume. Maybe I can put it in my company. But when you look at the resume, it, no offense, but it's just ugly. I mean, anybody as an employer who will look at this resume, it's just giving a bad impression. Like, why should I hire this person who's unorganized, even just with this presentation skills, right? So you have to put your trust in Allah, but you have to do your part. Of course, dress up, for the interview, make sure that your resume is all nice and it's impressive to look at, not just the degrees on it, but just even the presentation point of view. So these are all the things that you have to look at, even though from a spiritual point of view, we know that we have to rely upon Allah, but you have to make sure that you are doing all your parts in order to make sure that you've done your part, and then put your trust in Allah. Marriage, a lot of times we think that by getting married, your expenses are going to go up. For sure they are, right? There's no doubt about that. And then, of course, then you have kids. That's part of marriage. And every time you have kids, there's more diaper expenses, there's more food expense. You might have to move to a bigger apartment. All of those, but personally, and I'm sure if somebody can talk about it from their own experience, you know that as I've got married, or as I've had more kids in my life, my paycheck has increased, right? And that's like direct, basically, it's a provision from Allah. So don't ever think that these factors are going to reduce you in your rizq, but it's actually going to increase you. And of course, make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who provides. Call him with his beautiful names. Ya Razaq, the one who provides. Ask him, and inshallah he will give. The more you thank Allah, right? Sometimes money or wealth is basically it's in your heart, right? Sometimes people could be very rich, wealth-wise, number-wise, but they don't have that happiness because they always want more. But you need to be in a mindset of thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Teach yourself and your kids any little things that happen in your life. Make sure that you are appreciating it. And then we know from a hadith that the affairs of a believer are very strange, that when he is given something by his Lord, he's thankful. But if something is taken away, he has sabr, he has patience. So always be in a habit of saying alhamdulillah, which is thanking and praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And teach your kids as well, because a lot of times our kids are just spoiled, and they just don't even know what it means when things are taken away. And when they are given something, a lot of kids in these days will think that that's their right? It is something that they deserve. But always teach yourself and your kids to be in a habit of appreciating other people. Any little things. They hold the door for you, thank them, right? They take you out, somebody takes you out for lunch or dinner, thank them for that, right? Don't ever think that you deserve it. It's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be in that mindset of thanking and praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one point from the giving part, from the charity part, how it increases you psychologically as well, that you are giving, you upper hand is better than the lower hand, right? So it will actually mentally put you in a mindset that you are giving. You're not always at the receiving end, but you're at the giving end as well. Being honest in one's dealings. So those of you who might have businesses, right, or the ones who have jobs, try not to sleep right after Fajr. First of all, if you are still having trouble in waking for Fajr, go for Fajr prayer, right? But not just that, stay up. And that's the best time to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. But it's also the time where Prophet ﷺ has actually asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless the morning part for his ummah, for his nation. And when you're dealing, try to do some of, like early morning meetings. We might hate them, but they are very productive. and that's the blessed part of the day as well. So try to do your work right after you're done with your fajr, or remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be in a habit of not going to sleep for an hour or so before you can go back to work. Try to stay up and do something that is productive, and being honest in one's dealing, and try to do seek for Allah's provision in the early part of the day. Okay, this is of course not killing one's children. Hopefully nobody's doing that, but the key over here is due to fear of poverty, right? So it's the same thing that, I'm not going to get married or have more kids because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to lower me in my risk. But no, a lot of times people back in the days, they used to kill children because thinking that it's going to make them poor. But again, it goes back to relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sustenance, making the hereafter one's main concern. And of course, if you have that in mind, then anything that you're about to find a job, right? And if it's related to any of the industry which is questionable, you're not going to apply there, even if you have a very high, paying job. Don't have this mindset that, what, Allah will forgive me. Well, I'm going to make high paying. I'm going to get this high salary, and then I'm going to donate it for the sake of Allah. It doesn't count, right? If you know that the money is haram, even if you spend it for the sake of Allah, it's not going to count. So always keeping hereafter in mind what you're making and what you're spending, keeping that in mind, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase you in your rizq. Now, getting to some technical side, we will get into taxes. Okay. So before we get into the points about taxes and what are some of the things that you can do at year end, or just in general, what are some of the things that you can do in order to lower your taxes? Just some points about standard deduction versus itemized deduction. So what does that mean? These are some of the questions that always come up when I'm doing taxes at year end. And now, standard deduction is a fixed amount that is given to you basically by IRS. They have a fixed amount, about $6,300, $6,350 for single, $12,700 for married. And then what it does is what you have to look at is let's say for the sake of math, for simple calculation, you make $100,000, right? And then you take out this standard deduction. Of course, this is the starting point that IRS gives you that will lower your $100,000 to, let's say, $75,000, right? And then and that is the amount that you will have to pay taxes on, not the $100,000 that gets in your pocket, but the amount that is after that fixed standard deduction amount that IRS gives you. But what if I want more than that, right? So if there's a fixed amount, then there's some itemized deductions that you can do. So charity is actually part of it. Now, a lot of times what happens is let's say your standard deduction is about 60, like I said, $12,700 for married couples. And then a person, once I'm done doing the tax return, then a person will come and say, you know what? Oh, I actually donated $100 to my mosque, right? But then that $100 is less than the $12,700 of standard deduction. So that might not count. So what happens is you have to it's just basically two ways of lowering your taxes. One is standard deduction or itemized deduction. You can only do either or. And standard deduction is a fixed amount. Itemized deduction is adding up different types of deductions, such as your mortgage interest, medical and dental expenses, your contributions, your charity. Those are all part of that. If all of those put together is more than this 12,700 number that I gave, and it always changes from year to year, then that's the number. Then you basically itemizing deduction. At that point, when you know that all of your itemized deductions are more than your this 12,700 number for standard deduction, now you can put in some donations as well, right? A lot more, and then inshallah your AGI, basically your gross income, comes down, and that's the amount that you will, at the end of the day, depending on which bracket it falls into, that's the tax you will have to pay. And tax credit versus tax deduction, that's basically anything that is tax deduction is basically it lowers your taxable income. So we just talked about like standard deduction or itemized deductions. These are all the things that will basically lower your income. And then you have tax credit, which basically lowers your tax bill. One of the very popular one is earned income credit. So what that does is let's say you made $30,000 and then you lowered your tax. Basically, your gross income came out to be, let's say, $20,000. But then there's the earned income credit of $5,000, and you had to pay. Let's say you had, just out of rough math, you had $10,000 worth of taxes to pay to IRS, but you got this credit for $5,000. It lowers your tax bill, so now you only have to pay $5,000 for your taxes. So that's some differences, and don't forget the April 17th deadline for 2018. Now, a lot of times people think that, you know what, I'm going to file an extension. It's going to give me some time to file my tax return. But let's say you own a business, and we know that as an employee, your employer is taking out taxes from your paycheck every month. Every time they pay you, they take out some taxes and they give it to IRS or state. But let's say you have your own business, you're responsible for paying your taxes. So let's say you made $100,000 and you owe $20,000 of taxes, and you say, you know what, I'm just going to wait till I'm going to file an extension in April, and I'll have some time to file my my taxes. That doesn't mean that that $20,000 that you owed gets to be paid within 5 to 6 months. You have to pay that before April 17th. And then you can worry about the filling out the form in detail at a later date, but your taxes are still due before that. So it's just keeping that in mind. These are some of the points that are important. And now we will, inshallah, get into some of the smart tax moves. Now, one of them is, of course, contribute to a retirement plan. Now, I'm not going to get into details with what's the best retirement plan or whatnot, but the best one is, of course, the one that you can get with your employer. Okay, a lot of companies, in order to retain their employees to attract good talent, this is one of the things that they have, that we will match your 401k. Most of you guys might be familiar with 401k. And it's basically, let's say you make $100,000 and you put in $5,000 into your retirement plan. That means that $5,000 that you put in, you don't pay any taxes on that. Okay. And then you only pay taxes, and your income goes down by that $5,000, and then your income that IRS recognizes is not $100,000, it's actually $95,000, right? So this is something, and then on top of that, your employer usually matches your contribution, right? They say that if you're going to put in 4%, we will match another 4% as well, and that's just free money, right? And that money that they're giving you is basically tax free as well. But then, of course, there's more details into it. You won't be able to touch this money for a while. And then if you take it out early, then you have to pay penalties on it. And on top of that, the money that you took out, that becomes your income. And of course, you pay taxes on that as well. So we won't have time to go into too much detail on that. But overall, make sure that you have some type of retirement plan. Of course, you have to look into this money where you put this money that you put in retirement plan. Are you then that money gets invested into different stocks or different mutual funds? Are those halal? Right? That's something that's homework for everybody. You can't just say my company was offering it and I just gave them the money, and then they invested it in questionable companies. Not my fault. Yes, it is, right? So either it'll be better if you don't even apply for it. But if you're gonna get this plan through your company, make sure that the money is going to go towards something that is halal. And of course, the money that you put in, the earnings and the money that your employers matching, all of that, it doesn't get recognized in order to to pay taxes on it. So that's something that you keep in mind. Now, the problem with that is that your company will take out whatever percentage you tell them, and what you can do is that year end is coming. I got maybe you were not contributing as much throughout the year. At the end of the year, you could say that, you know what, I want higher percentage to be taken out. Okay, so that's one of the moves that you can make is go in your company's back-end system where you used to tell them that how much you're contributing to your retirement plan, and increase that percentage for, like right now, for your next paycheck, right? Make sure you increase that, and that money will, of course, that percentage can be increased. Yes, your tax, your paycheck, your net paycheck is going to be a lot lower, but you know that money has been put in towards your retirement plan, and of course that is going to save you on taxes as well. So the second part is on your flexible spending account. Okay, of course, if we wanted to talk about the retirement plan, we can go on and on, but the key is that that you have something. If you haven't been putting it, just get into the habit of putting some money into retirement plan. And by the way, for 2017, the limit is of $18,000. So if you have only had $5,000 in your retirement plan, increase that percentage with your company. So this way you can contribute as much as you can, up to $18,000, and that will be actually basically tax deduction. Now, number two, flexible spending account. What are they? And a lot of times people confuse that with health saving account. Now, with the reason why I didn't put HSA, which is health saving account, is actually considered better. Now, what are these? This is something that, again, kind of same thing like retirement plan, but when you put in some money to the side and you don't get tax on it. Okay, you don't get tax on it, but just like 401k plans. But the key is that money, when you're going to take it out, you have to use it for health related expenses. There's a long list of expenses that you can look into, which are health related, and those are the types of expenses you can use this flexible spending account. But the problem with this flexible spending account, usually you get this with your employer, and they are basically use it or lose it. Okay, and you say that, you know what, I'm going to spend, and overall you can look at your history, and this is where budgets will come in. Okay, and we'll talk about budgeting, where you look at, okay, how much did I spend in my last year in health expenses, medical expenses. Or you can say, you know what, I have a baby coming up, my wife is due next year, and you talk to your employer, and they'll have this flexible spending account options, and you can put the money in there, and that's of course tax free. But then when you use that money, you can only use it towards paying off for your, let's say, delivery expenses, right? Or pay off your let's say your kid had to get some glasses or whatnot, right? Any medical related expenses. But you might end up saying, you know what, I'm going to have $10,000 worth of expenses, and you put in $10,000. Now year end comes up, and you might still have a couple $1,000s still left. Now, where are you going to spend it? And you start thinking about different ways on how you can spend that money. And so the key is use it or lose it. So what you want to do is for the next year, this is one of the ways that it's not just about saving money in 2017 tax return, but what are some of the ways that I can improve my savings for next year, or how I can reduce my tax bill next year. So what you can do is if you ended up taking out too much from your paycheck for flexible spending account or FSA, just talk to your employer and say, you know what, lower that. Or if you think that there's some more expenses coming up, then increase that amount. But of course, the key is whatever money that you put in here, it's basically IRS wouldn't recognize it as your income, and which basically means that your AGI, your gross income, is going to be a lot lower, and you will be paying less taxes on it. Number 3, donate to charity, the most important one right here, right? This is something that, again, if you're itemizing deduction, so I see some more people have joined, but we talked about standard deduction versus itemized deduction. If you are itemizing deduction, then charity is important, right? The more charity that you give, the lower your tax, your AGI, meaning your gross income. So what does that mean? You had $100,000 worth of income, you donated $10,000, and so that's basically means that $90,000 is what you will be taxed on. So that $10,000 will actually lower your gross income. Now, a lot of times people think that I'm going to give $100 and I'm going to get $100 back or 50% of it. That's not true. It's just simply lowering your income, and then you pay tax on that income amount. So donate to charity. It's of course, is lowering your taxes at the same time. It's a religious obligation is being fulfilled, right? And we know that this is one of the ways you can increase your risk as well, that we covered in the previous topic. One of the most important ones. So think about all the different charities that we have, and it's just not your mosque, but other projects that are in your community, such as ACC, that are doing amazing things for the community and adding value. Keeping them in mind. So make sure that you donate, of course, before year end, and make sure that, and it's just not in Ramadan. A lot of times people donate in Ramadan, especially if there's zakat money, because the rewards have been multiplied, and that's it. But then let's say you miss that opportunity. December is coming up and you are itemizing deductions. Make sure that you donate, of course, within your means as much as you can in order to lower your tax bill. It's a win-win situation, right? You're increasing your risk, you're lowering your taxes, and you're helping out your community for a cause that is so important to you. So that's going to do that. Now, not sure that if a lot of taxes that I do, not many people, at least our Muslim community, is into it for obvious reasons. Maybe they don't have knowledge about it, or maybe they can't find opportunities where it comes to halal investing. But let's say you are into it, right? You have found out about some halal investments, stocks, bonds, whatnot, and you got this opportunity where you had a capital gain. Basically, you bought it for $10 and moved up to $20. Okay, what you can do is now since it moved up, you will have to pay taxes on capital gains. But what you could do is look for. Now, let's say you also had a investments that you bought for, let's say, $50, and they have gone down to $10. Okay, and there's no chance that you can think about it that in long term these stocks are going to go up. They have definitely gone down. So sell those stocks, right? So if they're $50, they got down to 10. You sell them. You basically made a loss of $40. That can be used to offset this gain that you made from this $10 investment that moved up to $20. So this way it will offset, and that's one of the things that you can do before year end. Make sure that you sell anything that you know that it's not going to go up. It's something that you lost in your investment, and then you can offset your capital gains with that. We won't spend too much time on that, but then let's get on with the college and education expenses. Now, you think that if you're studying, let's say your courses are starting in 2018, your college and education expenses are actually based upon what you pay, not when you take your school, not when you take your education, right? So the key is that if you know that you have classes coming up in 2018, let's say January, and you're able to prepay it in 2017 in December, then prepay it, and it will actually lower your tax bill as well. So just keep that in mind. And of course, college and education expenses are tax deductible. Medical expenses, same thing, right? We talked about it briefly when we talked about these FSA, flexible spending account. But let's say if you don't even have that, but you have some medical expenses that you're, maybe your parents, your grandparents that you're supporting, and your medical expenses are high. There's a catch that it's not just that you bought a $50 medicine and now you can deduct that. Your medical expenses have to exceed your 10%. They have to be at least 10% of your AGI, your gross income. So what does that mean? You made $100,000. You donated money. You got your mortgage interest. Let's say Islamic financing, but they'll still send you a slip which basically says that this is how much interest you paid throughout the year. And so after all of those itemized deduction, your AGI came down to, let's say, $80,000. Your medical expenses have to be 10% of that, okay, of your AGI. And if you have that, right, then what you can do, so basically $8,000 worth of medical expenses, then you can deduct it. But then let's say you say that, you know what, I'm at like 7,900 and I need just one more $100, but I don't have any medical expenses. What you can do is you can, again, prepay some of the medical expenses that are coming up. Just like how we talked about in your education expense, this is another trick that you can do is that let's prepay in order to get to that 10% mark. And now I can lower my, basically deduct 10% of my, medical expense, 100% of your medical expenses, and they're going to lower your, which was, to another 10%, and now you pay taxes on that. So basically about $72,000, that's what you're going to pay taxes on. So that's one of the tricks that make sure that you prepay. My favorite, business expenses. A lot of times your wife, maybe, she's a homemaker and, heavily involved with the kids, but she has a side project that she does, right? Whatever it may be, okay? Any type of business expense. When you think about business, it doesn't mean you have to have an office and, a corporation and have employees or whatnot. It could be a side project that you're working on, of course, with the intention that it's going to be generating income later down the road. But all those expenses, right, that you had, those can be deducted easily, right? That's one of the best ways that you can actually lower your expenses. A lot of us might have some side projects that we're doing, hoping that later on, inshallah, it will generate some income. Maybe it's a way that we can quit our job and work on this full time. If you don't have that, try to have one, right? Do something other than just your job. Just from an advice from a personal advice for everybody, right? It has nothing to do with taxes, but just try to do something on the side. But now if you know that this is something that can be considered a business, then all of those things can be deducted. Let's say even the driving that you did, your mileage, you can deduct those expenses. Let's say you met somebody at a restaurant, you ate, you paid for their bill, that bill basically can be deducted if you talked about business in that meal, right? So many things that you can do. This is something, again, we can go on and on about it. You hire somebody, you hire contractors, freelancers to do some work for you, right? You can deduct that as well. So keep that in mind, that try to have some type of side project, which inshallah is going to generate some income in future. But of course, in the beginning, it might not be getting you any revenue, but you have so many expenses. Don't lose those expenses, deduct them, and this way you can lower your expenses as well. Okay. Contribute to a 529 account. Now, what does that mean? You can actually put some money aside by creating this account for your child's college account. Okay. Now, how much can you contribute? $14,000 per individual. Now, what does that mean? Let's say you have 3 kids. Okay. You have 3 kids. I can contribute $14,000. Okay. And my wife can also contribute $14,000. So for 3 kids, basically per kid, you could donate, or put money aside, $28,000 per child. That 14 is from you, 14 is from your wife. So basically, $28,000 times 3 is basically about $84,000. Okay, $84,000 a year you can put in. We all know that inshallah our kids are going to basically go to college or university for higher education. They can get a better job, and what we need to think about is if we're going to end up putting some money aside for the college fund, why not put it in this account? Now, you won't be able to touch it, but of course, when you know that this is something that's going to be coming up no matter what, right? No matter what, you're going to be spending money on this on your kids' college fund. Why not put it in this 529 account? And what it will do is basically it's going to lower your taxes. And look at how much you can put in, right? $14,000 per for yourself. So $28,000 from you and your wife per child. You got 2 kids or 3 kids, you can put in up to $84,000 a year. And we know college is going to get expensive as we move, every year. If you're putting some money to the side, don't just put it in a separate bank account, but create a 529 account, and then you can lower your expenses through that as well. What are some of the other things that you can do? A lot of times people think that if I go to a such and such accountant, he gets so much, or tax guy, he's going to get me a lot more money than with somebody else, right? It's all about based on all this information that I'm sharing with you. They just ask you these questions. Do you have, XYZ item? Okay. And then do you have a business or whatnot? And they will put that in. And of course, that's one of the ways that you can lower your taxes, but it's not free income that you're getting from, let's say you get a tax return back, tax refund back. That refund is not just free money given to you. It's the money that you have paid throughout the year, and part of it is coming back. Okay. Now, of course, if you get a bigger paycheck at the end of the year, or when you do your tax refund, when you get your file your tax return, you get this refund, and it's a lot bigger than you thought. There's a huge chance that you have been giving a lot more to IRS every year than you should have. Okay, so you might not have remembered, but there's all these forms that you had fill out before you got your job. One of them was W-4, and it asks you, are you married? No. And how many children do you have? And you add up all those numbers, and that's basically the higher that number is, the less taxes that they will take out at basically every time they give you paycheck. So now you could have put that number. So higher that amount, less they will take out. So let's say you just put down 1 or 2, and you have like 5 kids. Then basically you are paying a lot more taxes. And at the end of the year, when you will file your tax return and you tell IRS that you have 5-6 kids and you paid so much tax throughout the year, they're going to give you a lot higher check. So based on that, what you can look at, okay, based on my life situation, what has changed? I got married, I have kids now. You can increase that amount. So what will happen is this is not something that is tax strategy in terms of you're going to save any taxes or give a lot more, but this is simply adjusting it so you're not giving too much or you're giving too less. And in fact, giving a little bit more is better because, of course, it's somewhat of a saving. If you have money, you most likely will end up spending it. But what you do is you get a big fat check once you file your return. But the other is if you give a little bit too less, then IRS is going to charge you penalty as well. So that's one of the strategies that you can do at year end, and make sure that you you have the right number on your W-4. So you can always contact your HR and say that I want to adjust that amount, right? Just like your contribution amount that I talked about in your retirement plan. You can always adjust that, or how much money you're putting in your flexible spending account for your medical expenses. Also, this withholding, make sure that you are filling that out as well properly, so you're not giving too much or giving too less. Okay. Now, all of this put together, and of course, the best thing that you can do. These are some of the points that you can do right now, right, or plan out for 2018. But let's say there was no such thing as taxes, and you should still have what we call, 2018 personal budget. Everyone should have a personal budget, and believe me, it's scary because it's kind of like somebody who might have gone on a diet, and somebody told you have to count your calories, right? And it should be a one-time thing. It's nothing that you should every little bite that you take must be accounted for. But overall, just based on your lifestyle, you look at, okay, you know what? this is what I eat every day. This is what I eat at lunch, dinner, some snacks. On weekend, maybe my consumption of eating might go up. And at the end of the day, when you start, counting those calories, you realize how much you're eating. And then based on that, you can say, okay, you know what? I need to adjust it. Same thing with your personal finances. You will be surprised how that $3 of coffee that we buy at Starbucks can eventually add up to $100 or $200 a month just on coffee, because every day you're swiping, once in the morning, once at the end of the day, and they'll all add up. And if you don't have a budget where you're basically looking at your just tracking your expenses. I'm not even saying have a goal of making X amount of income and X amount of savings, although you should. But it's scary that once you start adding up expenses, whether it be gifts or basically your eating out expenses, right? You and your spouse, they add up, your vacation or whatnot. And then based on that, you have to adjust your lifestyle. So now let me share my screen with everyone. I'm going to stop presenting for, let's see. All right. Can you guys see my screen? I have an Excel file open, and just let me know if you guys can see that. See it? All right. So right now, what I'll do is this is something that can be adjusted for everyone, right? So everyone has a different situation in life, and let's say averagely you are making, and what I like to do is just do it on a monthly basis. Don't do this as something that at year end or this is something should be a practice like on a monthly basis. I in fact would do it on a weekly basis. Just look at some of the expenses that have gone up. I'll type that in, how much money, usually your income doesn't really change. It's usually fixed based on your paycheck, right? So just for the sake of math, let's say you make $50,000 a year. Most likely, 20% of it is going to be taken out, okay? And then basically this $40,000 will be your take-home paycheck. And then on a monthly basis, you might be making $3,300 or so a month. For again, these are just a rough estimate. Let's just make it $3,500. Okay, this is a monthly budget for somebody who makes $50,000 a year. And then what you want to do is this amount is not going to change for the most part. But these are something that you want to look at. Now, if this is the first time you're doing it, the best thing would be just look through your bank statements. If you're able to export it in Excel, and it'll be a lot easier to organize in Excel file. But just add them up and see how much you've been spending in different categories. You don't just want to say, I made $5,000 and I spent $4,000. I have $1,000 left. I did good, right? You want to categorize it, and because not all of these are gonna be the same throughout the year. Now let me just quickly go through some of the things that are pretty much fixed. Okay, let's say kids tuition. Now if you have a couple kids and let's say you pay about $400 a month, which is probably very cheap in these days, right? For the Islamic school. Let's say your rent, right? Your rent could be, I remember when I first got married and just a 2-bedroom apartment in Chicago was $1,100. I'm sure things have changed now. Cell phone and this is for like a couple with 2 kids, okay? Making $50,000 income. And cell phone, okay, how much is it going to be? Let's say averagely it's actually $80 a month per person. But let's say we'll make it 70, okay, times 2. You and your wife have cell phone, internet expense, usually $60 a month or so, right? Utilities, sometimes it goes up, but your gas expense will go up in winter. Electricity will go up in summer for AC. But overall, this is one of those expenses that what you can do is if you look at your utility bill, they usually tell you how much you spent year to date, or you can add up previous months, previous 12 months, and figure out how much you're going to end up spending in a year. Because this is something that can fluctuate, from year over year or month over month. So what you want to do is roughly, depending on your household, depending on where you live, whatnot. My personal experience, all your water bill, your gas, whatnot, have been around $200 a month, right? Especially if you have an apartment. Of course, it goes a lot higher if you have a house. You should have somewhat of a gym expense, or of course, let's say you're going to Lifetime Fitness, which is horrible. It'll be like $75 a month for things that you don't even use. Why don't I downgrade a little bit, go to Planet Fitness, pay $10 a month, right? These are this is just an acute example of basically just for one of the items, right, over here. What can I cut down? Just $5, $10 here and there. What is something that I'm not using? Utilities, you know what? My electricity bill is high. You know, why don't we just keep the lights off, right? It's your lifestyle changes, just like that diet example I gave you. It's not about something that you do for 3-4 months and then you relax for the rest of your life. It's your lifestyle change that you have to make, whether it's losing weight or whether it's about your finances. Teaching our kids to turn the lights off. This is resources that are being used. Even if I have extra $100, $200, I'm a doctor and I can pay a lot more. No, let's cut down on our utility bill, right? So let's say you have about $40. I want to go to Planet Fitness. Let's not downgrade to Planet Fitness either, but let's go to LA Fitness and we'll pay $40 instead of $75 at Lifetime. Allowance. Now, this was something about being in a mindset of giving and not just receiving. If your wife doesn't work, she should have somewhat of an allowance for her own personal spending. How much that is, that's your personal matter, right? Depending on how much you make, it could be different from person to person. But your kids, as they're getting older, you might be giving them $5, $10 a month for their personal spending. Even I would say that your dad is a doctor and he's taking care of your mom very good. You should still give her a little bit from your pocket as well. Just as something that even if she doesn't need it, but give something, $50, $100 or whatever. But overall, let's say averagely you're paying $150 of allowance. It could be towards your mom or your wife, whatever. Auto insurance. This is usually roughly $150. And again, everybody has a different situation. You could have a nicer car, more cars, but I'm just going to put $150 here. This changes. It started off for me, just on a personal side, $150 a month, and I used to complain, and now it's like $600, $700 a month, right? As your family grows, this number is going to go up as well. So for now, we'll just put $400. This is a family of 2. Now you can say, well, I eat organic. Of course, then the number is going to go up. You live in a city where you're paying tolls. I live in Windsor, as I talked about it, and I work in Detroit. And of course, there's toll expenses, right? That's something that there are benefits of living in Canada. One of them is free health. But of course, if you're working in Detroit, then you have your gas and toll is going to go up. Depending on your drive, maybe you take train in the morning to work. If you're living in Chicago and you're taking metro from suburbs to put that in, to downtown, put that in your part of your budget. But we'll just put $300 right now. Donation. It doesn't have to be 2.5%. That's the minimum, right? On your savings, not on your income, on your savings. That's the difference. That Islamically, the system has encouraged us to not just hoard money. If you're gonna hoard for whatever reason, let's take out some of that and give it to the poor. So the more money is continuously circulating. Of course, if you're not hoarding it, of course you're spending it, and if you're spending money, that's also helping out the economy as well. Hopefully, you're not spending just without thinking. But if you spend, that's actually good for the economy. You're creating jobs. But don't put money in your bank account or your investments alhamdulillah, and you're not using it. And that's the key in Islamic system, that you're not donating based on your income, but it's based on your savings, right? That's the zakat part. But that's just the bare minimum. You should try to give more. as your income increases, give a lot more, right? So let's say it's about $150. You put $10 here, $10 here in different causes, and it's about $150 a month. You know what? I'll make it $100 for now. Now this is scary because you can see that and right now, miscellaneous and meals, I call it, entertainment, right? These are those expenses that might not fit in any of these fixed categories, right? And this is the scary one over here. That could be Eid gifts that you're buying at year end, right? You got a bigger family. Your wife has like 30 cousins, right? And each cousin has 2-3 kids, and each one of them is supposed to get a gift. Then that's actually a good problem. Okay, alhamdulillah, good. Of course, you'll be receiving some gifts as well, but on Eid time, you have to give, and it's something that's part of Islam. It's part of the ties of kinship that I talked about. The more you do that, the more risk that Allah will provide you. But from a financial standpoint, it is an expense, right? There's money that going out of your pocket. You have to put money to the side. Now, this is not going to be fixed on a monthly basis, right? This is something that goes up and down depending on the events. Anytime you have a party in your house, right? That's about easily $100, right? Just to buy paper plates or whatnot, and of course the food expense and things like that. You're not having parties for other people every week or every month, but the time that you do, that's gonna go up. Eid shopping at the year end is going to be a lot, but over time it might of course that's not something that you're recurring every month. Kids haircut, your own haircut, right? That adds up. Things that oil change, right? Something happens every three months or so for your car. Roughly, I would put at least $500 in this category. Now, again, this is just everyone's situation is different, but things just add up. And now just by looking at it, it's scary. Like, I don't think I exaggerated in any of these things. And if a person is making $50,000 a month, a year, which roughly that is what a person starts out his life with, and minimum wage is even less, right? You can say that $7-8 an hour in a yearly basis. Then both parents, of course, it has to be a dual income household. But the key is, let's say you're making it $3,500 a month, and of course you look at all of these expenses, and you know what, we're gonna have to move to a 1-bedroom apartment. Let's make or you know what, kid's gonna have to go to public school, or I'm just gonna homeschool them, right? That could be another option. So then it's like, okay, let's take out the kids and you know what, this amount, $400, you might think it's a lot, but I've actually done budgets for Islamic schools. You have to pay for the teacher's salary, right? And if there's $400 is literally breaking even for depending on how many students they have. It's nothing that we should be complaining about, but you know what, if you're not able to do it, let's take it out and try something else. Maybe homeschooling is an option. Maybe your food, instead of organic, now we're gonna have to buy non-organic. Different lifestyle changes we're gonna have to make. Instead of living in a 2-bedroom apartment, let's move to the only place where you can actually do it for $800 would be Texas, right? Maybe things have changed there now, but this is the only way I can have some savings. And my advice as a rule of thumb that you should have, like, let's say once you figure out this is your monthly expense, okay? Your miscellaneous goes up and down. You're eating out a lot. Every time you eat out with your family, it's about $50-$60, right? Minimum $30 to $40, right? Depending on where you go and depending on how big your family is. But this is nothing that should scare you, as if you're a single guy and you're just about to get married and you don't think you're going to get a $50,000 job. This should not scare you from not getting married or having more kids, because we know that those are some of the points that Allah has told us. It will increase you in your risk. So keeping that in mind, you should have at least 5 to 6 months of savings. You have the, so once you do your budget, put some money aside for 5 to 6 months. So when I don't make this money, $3,500 a month, I can still survive for 5 to 6 months, because my lifestyle is not going to change. I can't just break my lease and move with my in-laws or my parents and save on this $800 rent. and of course all those other things. So you're gonna continue on with your life, but you have some money to the side, 5 to 6 months, so you can pay for your, you can still continue paying your expenses and find that job that you're looking for in that time. Overall, I know I might have simplified this, or I might have gone into a little bit too much detail, but the key is account yourself, right? That's the main message that I want to give is make sure that you have an accountability system where you're looking into your finances and you're basically looking at where your money is coming from, has to be halal, and where are you spending that money. Of course, that has to be halal and has to be within your means. A lot of times we get too excited and we go buy a house, right? And then we're not able to pay for it, right? There's property taxes. Those of you who own a house, don't just look at my monthly, mortgage income or mortgage expense or what have you is X amount. You're gonna have property taxes at the end of the year or every 6 months or so. Those have to be accounted for as well. And in that budget that I just showed you, in the miscellaneous column, that could be your education expense as well. That would be hitting you later on in life when your kids have gone older. So what are the things that you can do? First of all, apply all of those items that we talked about on how you can increase your risk. Because it's not just about saving on taxes and how you're spending, but try your best to look for ways on how you can increase income. And my personal view is, again, this is just me personally, and it's not ACC or anything, but personally, whatever income that you're putting in, that should be all the leader of the house's responsibility. Increasing that income doesn't mean that now my wife is going to go and work. And again, if that's what's happening, awesome, right? Of course, your lifestyle can be better, but that is not one of the strategy of increasing your household income. There's other ways of increasing income as well. Like I said, think about a side business, right? Have that intention that I want to have a better lifestyle. You're asking for provisions from Allah. Inshallah, Allah will put barakah in your business as well. And so that's one of the strategies you can do. Hey, you know what? I'm going to buy a land in somewhere, and maybe it will appreciate in a couple of years. Those of y'all, I saw a brother from Canada. If you're living in Toronto, every year the houses are appreciating 10%. My uncle bought a house for $250,000 like 10 years ago, and now he sold it for $1 million, right? This is something that's just very common in that. So look for some of the smart investment opportunities where you can buy something by not, through interest loans, of course, but figure out how you're going to save some money and buy something, and that will generate you more income later on, whether it's through capital gain or just through maybe you'll buy, put a building up and rent it out as a commercial building or a house building. So many different things that you can do. Working nonstop, having both husband and wife working is not the right strategy. That's in my opinion. That should not be part of your strategy. Try to lower your expenses, live within your means, and try to increase your income. So overall, we covered many topics. Of course, Islamically, how we can increase our risk. We talked about some of the tax strategies, some of the tax things that we can do, and not just wake up in December, but think about how you can improve your next year. And one of the best starts is by creating a budget, which we also talked about. Trying to come up with a budget. Both husband and wife should be on this as well. That's my recommendation. Sit down. Let's say you're the main provider of your house, husband. Get the wife to sit down with you, show them the budget. Hey, look, this is how much I'm making. This is where the money is going. This is not to stress you out, but this is our situation. And let's try to cut these down. Let's try to turn off the lights. Let's not, cut down on the eat shopping. Let's, maybe it's the thought that counts. Maybe we don't have to buy them a cologne for every single person. Maybe let's go for a Starbucks gift card. Little things that you can do in order to cut down on your expenses. And of course, it's about the bottom line. The bigger the bottom line, the more peace of mind you will have, the more money you can give to organizations like a continuous charity, right? And that's just from my side. I'm gonna finish off by just saying this, that growing up, alhamdulillah, the best thing that could happen to me was that I paid for my own college tuition, right? So what I'll do is I'll work one semester and save some money and pay for my tuition the next year. But that's because this is an accounting degree, right? It's not and a lot of us who are becoming doctors, or some of us might not have opportunity to get a job every 3-4 months and quit and then go back to school and whatnot. Nobody has that much luxury, so the only way they can do is by getting a loan. Now that loan can be talking to your rich doctor uncle and say, hey uncle, hook me up, give me some money, and I'll pay you back once I become a doctor, just like you, right? That's one way. Or the other is, you know what, I need something interest free. Now we all talk about not going for interest, and then we play with just to make ourselves happy by saying, oh, you know what, Allah will forgive us. This is for education. Education is something that is for, let's take it, and we'll fall into interest bearing loans, and that will be a big burden. Like even after getting married and 10 years down the road, you're still paying off those debts. It's not just the debt, but the interest that has been accumulated on it. And it's something that I have never seen before. There's so many projects out there in Islamic community building masajids and school, but something like ACC, a continuous charity, I've never seen anything like that. And then I think the guys there are doing a wonderful job in coming up with the system on how they will give you interest-free loan. And then once a person is up and running on his feet, making money, and the first thing they're going to do is just think about ACC, give the money back to them. And of course, that money then going to be used for other people as well. So